The story of Purim happens in ancient Iran. Bibi also made use of it in his speeches. It's a little bit embarrassing. Because it's a very nice story, but it has no other documentation, let's say it this way, except the Bible. In this story, King Xerxes, who's the real king, is married to a Jewish girl, Esther, after he divorces Vashti, his wife, his legal wife, because she disobeyed him. We have to start with a woman getting fired for disobeying the man, because it's all a story of girl power, and we don't want the women to think they can disobey. So first of all, the disobedient woman is removed, so we can start with the Jewish girl who is elected. It's a real Cinderella story. She has no father, she has no mother. Her cousin, everyone thinks he's her uncle, but no, he's her cousin. Their fathers were brothers. It says so in the Bible, Bat Dodo, it says so in other versions. Her cousin grows her up as his daughter. Some say, some versions, it's not other versions of the same time, it's other translations or other tafsirs, midrashim, commentaries, exegesis of the book, that said he actually grew her up to be his wife. Now, we don't know if they were married or if they were about to be married, because the book doesn't really say it, but it was probably a rumor or an exegesis that was very current. In any case, this girl marries the king in a very sensitive time, because Haman, who is the great vizier, he's the great vizier, and Xerxes gives him a lot of power. He gives him his signet ring, and he makes everyone bow down to Haman. And everyone bows down to Haman except Mordecai, who is Esther's cousin. Now Haman knows that Mordecai is Jewish, and he decides to kill all the Jews. I want to say the date. He decides to kill all the Jews on the 13th of Nisan. People don't remember it because we celebrate Purim on the 13th of Adar, which is the 12th month back then, parallel to Esfand. And Nisan is the first month, parallel to Farvadin. When I say Farvadin, do I cover everything, or do I have to say March and February? Adar, Nisan, and Farvadin, and the last month before spring and the first month of spring. Okay? In the beginning of spring, he draws the lot when to kill the Jews, and the Jews are supposed to be killed on the last day, on the 13th of the last day, the last month of the year. And Esther doesn't tell she's Jewish until the right time. I'll save you this, well, not save you, I don't want to spoil the story, because when you go home, you'll go home and read it. It's a good story, a lot of sex and violence. But Esther tells Xerxes that she's Jewish eventually when the time is right, and then he decides to kill Haman, whom he made Grand Vizier and gave him his signet ring, which actually means he made him king. So Haman is the temporary king, but he dies at the end. It's important. The story of Pesach says that the children of Israel were in Egypt. Jacob and his sons went to Egypt because there was famine in the land, and then they stayed in Egypt because Egypt was very fertile, there was a lot of food there, and Joseph, the son of Jacob, was promoted in the court, like Mordecai was promoted after Xerxes executed Haman. So we have something here that is parallel, more or less. And then the Jews are in great danger because there are too many, and Pharaoh decides to kill them. Not this Pharaoh, another one who forgot about Joseph. He decides to kill all the Jews. The Jews are in grave danger. Moses saves them. On the way, all the firstborns of the Egyptians are killed. So we have, again, great massacre. And guess when we celebrate this?
14th.
Yeah, 14th of Nisan, which is, it's all around spring. Last days, Purim is in the last days of the winter, and Pesach is on the first days of spring. So we have all these stories of temporary king and grave danger, or we have to purify the air, and it all revolves around the New Year. Now there are holidays of New Year also in Tishrei, around September, October, and there are also similar holidays in the darkest time of the year, which is around December and January. And they all have the same customs of doing things not according to tradition. Now, sexual boundaries are sometimes broken. For example, in the Mimuna, girls are allowed to hit on boys. In Sizda Bedar, girls and boys meet. Sometimes even without their parents telling them, you have to meet. Or parents tell girls and boys to meet, which is also not what they're supposed to do. What does Esther do in the scroll of Esther which she shouldn't do sexually? Xerxes is not Jewish. She lies with a non-Jew. So sexual boundaries are broken. And the king or someone has to die in order for the new year to start better. In Christianity, when does Jesus die? In springtime, right? 13th of Nisan. So it all boils down to the ancient Mesopotamian myth. Around the new year, the world is in danger. If we don't do something, we won't live to see the next year. So we have to do something very drastic. We have to do something. Jane? Oh, yeah. What happened in Israel last week, I will not refer to. It's not part of the mythology. Maybe it will become a mythology one year, but we want to rejoice for the new year now. Think positive. We have to do something in order for the new year to be better, in order for us to be saved. What we have to do should be really drastic. We should sacrifice the king or the god. So the Christians really sacrifice their god. Their god dies and then goes back to life. But in other cultures, sacrificing the god or the king is not a very good idea because, king needs experience and people won't want to be kings. So there's a very easy solution. I'm talking about holidays like the Assyrian, Sumerian Akitu, which means barley. Barley is sown around Tishrei, September, October, around the vernal equinox, and is picked around the spring equinox. So there are two holidays called Akitu, both in the autumn and in the spring, which have to do with the myth of Marduk, the Assyrian god, who has to overcome chaos or Tiamat or someone. In the darkest time of the year, Marduk has to overcome darkness. If you notice, there are light holidays in the darkest time of the year all over the world. We also have one. Hanukkah. What happens in Hanukkah? They tried to kill us, we won. Right? We didn't really have to sacrifice a king, but it's also a they tried to kill us, we won holiday. Everyone is in danger, and I'll tell you a secret. Oh, I have to tell you the story first. In Hanukkah, which happens in December, it's a holiday of light because the Greeks desecrated the temple of the Jews, and then the Jews reconquered the temple, and they needed oil because the Greeks polluted all the oils. They defiled all the oil. And there was a for 7 days and 7 nights, which is exactly what they needed, or 8 days and 8 nights, which is exactly what they needed in order to make new pure oil. Which I learned it from a teacher who's a rabbi, which is, well, very, 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 very inaccurate, because oil doesn't have to be pure, because it doesn't take 8 days to produce new oil, and some other reasons like that. But we needed a holiday that has to do with light, because in this time of the year, light overcomes darkness. So you can call the light Marduk, you can call the light Maccabees, you can call the light Jesus, who was born in Christmas is also a holiday of lights. Why is Jesus born on Christmas? Why did they decide he was born around Christmas? Jesus has the sun rising from his head. The halo that everyone has is because in order to convince people to convert to Christianity, I'm talking about the 4th century of the Common Era, they had to convince them that Jesus is the God of light, the God of the sun God. He's also the Son God of God, but he's also the Son God. So that he's drawn in the circle of light, and that's when he's born. I always say that April Fool's Day is about 9 months before Christmas. But actually, it's not scientific, but I like this theory. Maybe I'll write about it and then it will become true. But actually, April Fool's Day is in what season?
Spring.
Spring, and around spring holidays. And the spring holidays are holidays that we have to do things that we normally shouldn't do, like lie. So this is just another spring holiday. What they did, there was a holiday called Akitu, which had similar traditions. Saturnalia has very similar traditions. You have to get drunk also with Purim until you don't know your right from left, or you don't know Haman from Mordecai. Oh, Mordecai. Does this ring a bell? His name sounds like another god I mentioned. His name sounds like the god Marduk, who is the one who overcomes darkness, or Tiamat, in the Mesopotamian holidays. So it all boils down together. Esther also has the name of a goddess, Ishtar. Ishtar, the goddess of fertility. She's an Assyrian goddess. Actually, she's all Middle Eastern goddess, a Semitic goddess, but she has a Persian name. If we move the aleph, what are we? Setoreh. Setoreh, star. What star are all the goddesses of love and fertility identified with? Venus. Nohid. Ishtar, Inanna. It has the name, except in Hebrew, which it's called Noga because we don't have goddesses. There's really only one God. It's always called in the name of the love goddess, and she's always drawn with a star near her head. She's also identified with a flower, with myrtle flower, which is called in Hebrew Hadass. I'm mentioning it because those of you who have read the scroll of Esther in Hebrew know that Esther has 2 names. Esther is her Persian name, and her Hebrew name is Hadassah, just like myrtle flower, Muit. So it all boils down together to wars of the gods, and they have to beat the Iranian Vohuman.